Welcome back, Sebastian here. So now it is time for my power rankings for the 2024 São Paulo ePrix. So, really exciting race, a lot to talk about, a lot to go over. But, starting right away with number 22, I'm going to go with Norman Nato. Out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate, a pretty tricky weekend for him. Probably his worst weekend so far this season. I know some of his issues in qualifying weren't entirely his fault. A bit too late getting to the checkered flag, not able to set a final run in qualifying, but still nonetheless not a great result there. And then in the race, got himself a 5-second time penalty for hitting the back of Degrassi, and I believe he was one of the final classified finishers. So all in all, and his teammate had a pretty good race, I thought, comparatively. So all in all, not a great race for Nato. Number 21, also out-qualified and out-raced by their teammate. I'm going to go with Jehan Daruvula. So really tough qualifying session. I think out-qualified by half a second when you take into account qualifying groups. The race not much better. His teammate showed that there was plenty of pace in that car. His teammate getting a drive-through penalty and then coming from the back. Safety car obviously helped there, but for Daruvula, never really showing a ton of pace, always towards the back, never really looking to be in the fight for a point at any point during the race today. Number 20, another rough race for Dan Ticktum. Out-qualified and out-raced by, or technically he did out-race Seti Kamara because his teammate was disqualified from the race, but still another really poor weekend for Ticktum. The qualifying struggles are starting to be an issue. That's 4 weekends in a row where he's been out-qualified by Seti Kamara, and that was the main area that he had pretty much absolute domination over him last year. And that was how he was able to get a lot of the points he got last year. Qualified really high up, get in the duels, and then basically hold on for a handful of points if you could. And it's really hard to do that when you're qualifying in the bottom 4 almost every weekend. Don't know what the issue is, but hopefully for him, and for his sake, he's able to resolve those issues soon. Number 19, I'm going to go with Robin Fines. So out-qualified his teammate Sebastian Buemi, but that was honestly not a particularly high bar given that his teammate qualified in 20th. Miles off the other 2 Jaguars too, and then in the race, Buemi was able to make up positions, end up in the points, but Fines well outside the points the entire race. Definitely not good enough for the Envision, a car that was very, very good today. Should have been in the pipe. Shouldn't have started as low as he did, and even if he did, should have been able to move up towards the points like his teammate did. Number 18, Nick Cassidy, a pretty poor weekend from him. He was off the pace of his teammate Evans from all through qualifying. Then the race was behind Evans by a handful of positions. Of course, gets that front wing damage on lap 5. Whether his fault was or not his fault, hard to say. But nonetheless, that damage did contribute. It seems like that damage contributed heavily to him eventually retiring from the race. So it's one of those hard ones to judge. I don't think it was a big mistake if there was one, but still it was objectively a pretty poor weekend all around for Cassidy. All right, number 17, Jake Hughes. So for Hughes, well, it's pretty simple. He didn't finish the race. He was out-qualified by his teammate. He was outside the points when he retired, and his teammate won the race. Not a pretty poor weekend all around. And he's definitely going to be looking for improvement next time out in Tokyo. Number 16, I'm going to go with Sergio Seti Kamara. Out-qualified his teammate Dan Ticktum for the 4th straight weekend. And during the race, the start of the race looked pretty quiet, but then towards the end of the race, he moved his way up. It looked like he might be with a shout of some points. I believe he was as high as 12th or 13th at one point, but got disqualified for going over too much energy. Was well outside the points anyway, so it doesn't really make a big difference to the end result. But never fun to get disqualified at your home race. All right, number 15. Go with Sasha Fenestras. Outraced and out-qualified by his teammate Oliver Rowland. Another tough weekend for Fenestras outside the points again. And I do really think that Fenestras needs to turn it up a notch and start getting consistent points finishes. We know the qualifying speed's there. Problem is that his teammate is also really good at qualifying. So it's harder for him to simply out-qualify his teammate with relative ease like he was able to do at times last year. and the race pace is something that really needs to start improving soon. Last year was an issue. This year it doesn't seem to be there compared to Roland. Of course, Roland's a pretty quick driver himself, if a bit inconsistent at times. But for Fenstras, he's kind of at the point where if this kind of performance gap between himself and Roland continues for the next several races, there may start to be questions about his seat for next year. Number 14. Nick De Vries, out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate Eduardo Mortara. Another kind of pretty anonymous race for De Vries. The only thing I really remember for De Vries is that he got damage. Pretty towards the end of the race, clipped the back of Nato at turn 3, also missed turn 1 at one point, and basically had to stop in the runoff area and then rejoin the track in order to not get a penalty. So not the cleanest of weekends. Qualifying I think has been a bit better recently, but the reality is the Mahindra's not a great car. Doesn't really have the ability to manage its energy like the other cars do, so points are really a rarity, and the best he can really do is be hoping to finish 11th, 12th, 13th, and hope some of the drivers ahead retire. So not a great race from De Vries, but a little bit better than earlier in the season. Number 13, with Lucas Di Grassi, out-qualified by his teammate, but did out-race his teammate. Although that being said, his teammate did retire from the race, so kind of out-raced him by default. Another not great home E-Prix for Di Grassi. Last year was pretty rough, as I recall. But for this year, qualifying again, out-qualified by his teammate. He's been out-qualified 4 races on the bounce now. He's definitely something that needs to be worked on. But the reality is, he is a bit older. Qualifying pace is usually something that goes a bit quicker than pace in the races. And for Di Grassi, he's really going to be hoping to try to turn around. Otherwise, this might end up being his final season in Formula E if he has another really tough year against Nico Müller this year. But for Di Grassi, I think it was not a great race. But I think he's probably going to want to be optimistic and just try to keep chipping away at the pace, and just trying to hope to be at the top of that group of bottom 3 teams, Abt, Mahindra, and ERT, and hope that there's enough DNFs that he's able to score a handful of points every weekend, and that's kind of what he needs to be aiming for. Alright, number 12, Stoffel Van Dorn, out-qualified his teammate John-Eric Byrne, but lost the race head-to-head to his teammate. So for Van Dorn, very similar situation to last year, qualified really well, and then fell backwards in the race. I guess the pace wasn't there, the strategy perhaps was not so optimal with the attack modes and everything. Wasn't too far off his teammate, only 1 position, and they were basically very close on track to each other. But for Van Dorn, it would be nice to actually see him beat his teammate John-Eric Byrne in the races a bit more often. Not a terrible weekend, but not a great weekend either. Alright, number 11, Sebastian Buemi. Qualifying was a disaster, qualified 20th. That's something that he's definitely going to want to avoid as much as possible in the coming races, but the race was a bit better. Did finish 10th, got the extra point for fastest lap. A little bit of redemption there, but it's very hard to kind of advance yourself further than that, because once you get into the points, the cars in those points paying positions are usually about the same speed as you, so it's much harder to kind of just move up past them. So really needs to make sure that those qualifying performances like we saw this weekend are an outlier and they don't happen again. Alright, number 10, Nico Müller. Another tough weekend for Müller. I put him here because I thought qualifying was very good, got himself up into the duels. Although that being said, Mortara also with a Mahindra powered car also got into the duels. So it does seem like that in qualifying they're getting a little bit closer to the pace of the other cars, but in energy saving and race time it's still a massive gap behind. For Müller, he looked good. He dropped out of the points as you would expect, driving in an Abt, but looked pretty good until he was forced to retire because of that front wing damage. Not sure what caused that front wing damage, likely hit the back of another car. We didn't see a replay exactly what caused it, but still nonetheless, really solid qualifying performance. I know he wasn't able to do the duels, but still nonetheless good result for Müller regardless of the DNF in the end. Alright, number 9, Eduardo Mortara, out-qualified and out-raced his teammate Nick De Vries. another pretty solid weekend, even if it didn't result in points. Like Muller, got himself up into the duels, first time this year he's done so. So a really good result there. Unfortunately, it was a track where overtaking is pretty easy, and we knew it was going to be very energy limited. So if we had that kind of result in Mexico, Diria, he might have been able to get some points out of it, but unfortunately it was at Sao Paulo, one of the worst tracks on the calendar for those bottom three teams. So, but nonetheless, a decent result, only a couple positions outside the points, and beat his teammate Nick DeVries again. Alright, number 8, go with Antonio Felix da Costa. Out-qualified and out-raced by his teammate Verline, but that being said, easily his best weekend this year. And I thought, honestly, he wasn't that far off his teammate either. It was very, very close in qualifying. Actually, a little bit off in qualifying, but much closer in the race. And I think, hopefully, that's a sign of a turnaround for him, and he's able to show performances like this week in and week out, and hopefully this isn't a one-off, and he ends up, qualifying in 20th again, thereabouts next time out. No whole lot to say. I think he led the race at certain points, but kind of just got shuffled down as the race went along, and as different drivers took attack mode at different points. Ended up finishing 6th, so decent result and decent points in the end. Alright, number 7, I'm going to go with John-Eric Byrne. Decent result for him. Out-qualified by Van Dorn, but did outrace him in the end. Honestly, with the 2 DS Penske's, I think they would have been a bit disappointed with how this race went. They both qualified pretty well, but they both kind of just ended up falling through the field. And that's something that they're definitely going to try to want to get on top of and want to avoid if they want to have any hope of competing for the championship. I do think that for DS Penske, I think the championship's a bit of a long shot. But that being said, I do think their drivers are talented enough, and I do think that over at least one lap pace, at least they can at least get into those positions where they can compete. But that being said, I do think the energy efficiency is still a bit lacking, and it might, at the end of the day, ultimately hurt them and kind of prevent them from fighting for the championship. Alright, for number 6, I've gone with Jake Dennis. Out-qualified and out-raced his teammate Norman Nato. Looked like he should have been able to get a podium this weekend, but unfortunately it seemed like pretty severe battery derating issues massively slowed him down towards the closing stages of the race. Had energy advantage on both Evans and on Bird, but it seems like those battery issues really hurt him towards the end. Don't think it was a terrible performance. Qualified 10th, that's definitely going to be a concern. We haven't really seen consistent lightning qualifying performances that we saw last year, which really helped propel him to the title. The race pace looks good though, and I think on tracks where overtaking is possible, like Sao Paulo, like Portland, it won't be too much of an issue. But when we get to the tighter tracks, Tokyo next week looks like it's going to be next in 2 weeks, looks like it's going to be very tight. London as well, tracks where overtaking is very difficult. Those poor qualifying performances might come back to bite him. Alright, number 5, I'm going to go with Pascal Wehrlein. Pretty good result for him. Out-qualified and out-raced his teammate Da Costa. Started on pole position, so very good performance in qualifying. Almost the opposite of last year, where they were very, very poor in qualifying, but very strong in the race. Not to say that the race performance was bad, but it does feel like they're much more balanced in terms of quality performance and race performance this year. Might be disappointing not to get the win, not end up on the podium, despite starting on pole, but that's sometimes the nature of the beast, and sometimes that's how some of these peloton style races can end up. But that being said, pretty good result I felt for Verline. Alright, number 4, I'm going to go with Max Günther. Out-qualified and out-raced his teammate Jehan Daruvala. Would have started, I believe, 4th on the grid without that gearbox penalty, and then of course took that 40 points grid penalty in the race, of course harkening back flashbacks to the Maconda era in F1, where Button and Alonso would get their 70 points grid penalties. Of course this is similar, but Formula E's very, very strict rules about taking extra gearboxes and such. So that's the way it is. But that being said, Günther recovered very nicely from that, got himself up to 9th place, showed excellent pace in the car, and I'll be excited to see what he can do next time out in Tokyo with his improved car. So that's the rumor. The rumor is that they found that they could get a lot more extra performance out of the package, putting a new gearbox in, and decided to take the penalty here where they knew they could overtake. So interesting to see. We'll see how it plays out in the coming races. Alright, number 3, I'm going to go with Mitch Evans. Another really solid drive today. I think, out qualifying, outraced his teammate Nick Cassidy. First time he's done that this year. I think he'll be a bit disappointed not to get the win, but obviously I think compared to the last recent races in Diriyah and Mexico, although they're not so recent now, a much better performance, first podium of the year as well, and hopefully for him this can get his championship challenge on track. Alright, number 2, I'm going to go with Oliver Rowland. Out-qualifying and out-raced his teammate Sasha Fenestras. Very impressive performance, particularly towards the end of the E-Prix, where he was basically just charging through the field and managed to overtake both Caroline and Dennis at the final corner to grab that final spot on the podium. So excellent job by Rowland. If he can do this consistently week in and week out, he might be a dark horse for the title. And number 1, shouldn't be much of a surprise, but it is Sam Bird. Out-qualified and out-raced his teammate Jake Hughes. Won the E-Prix from 5th on the grid. I was very, very surprised that he was able to pass Evans on the final lap, given the fact that he was behind him on battery energy left, on remaining energy. But it seems like the battery derating issues were caused quite a few drivers, Evans, Dennis, to slow down, even though they still had that battery left. But still, nonetheless, really strong performance from Bird. First win in quite a long time, 2021 New York City E-Prix. I thought he did a really good job controlling the pace, using the pace when he had to, and that overtake on the final lap was so very decisive, very well executed. So I thought he did an excellent race. So there you go. There's my power rankings for the 2024 Formula E São Paulo E-Prix. Thanks you so much for watching, and goodbye.